Okay, I've got some vocal there, so we're ready to go. This is Management 3603, and as I promised, I'm going to do a pre-recorded session for you because I've got some stuff Wednesday I booked up. So like you, I have stuff happen unexpectedly, and so thankfully we've got these videos that I can record and pre-record it. And so we won't, you'll have this for Wednesday, for your virtual Wednesday. Yesterday, we went over the Relax and Welty. We talked about them and how, and again, we talked about utilizing optimization in a variety of settings. One of them was a media buy, and believe that was Relax. It was over there on page 155 through 157. And we talked about that. Yeah, it was a media buy. So for a marketing major, that ought to be a very important case to you. And then the second thing we looked at was Welty, which was pages 161 to 167, and that dealt with building a portfolio. And in each case, those are due the 22nd, which is Friday. And what you need to do is just simply go over to the files and download those files and then upload them, and that's all you need to turn in. And it's going to be the same thing for this third case, Janders. Janders is over on pages 168 to 172, okay? And Janders involves a different kind of situation. It involves a make or buy, okay? Organizations always have to consider, should they outsource a particular function, or should they go ahead and try to do it themselves? And there's Coase's law, C-O-A-S-E, his economist, his law says that if a firm, if it's cheaper for a firm to outsource its work, it will do so rather than doing it itself. The only reason you might do it, if it would be cheaper, that you keep it internal, would be if maybe it was a proprietary issue, or maybe a national, maybe you're a government contractor or something like that. So every company has these situations: should we make or buy? Particularly people, assembly and assemblers and manufacturers. So pages 168 through 172 in the textbook walk you through that. And the Janders file, okay, is over there, just like Relax, Welty, and Welty. They are in the files, and I'm going to show you again so you know for sure, okay? And I'm in the student view, okay? And we'll come down here and we'll find the files. It's going to be here's the zip file, and I'll download it. Management Science Edition 13, and those are going to be in chapter 4, if I'm not mistaken. So let's open it up. And there is Relax, Welty, and then Janders. And since we're here already, let's go ahead and just open up Janders. And we'll take a look at it. And here's the solution. Now, in pages as I said, 168 through 172, they talk, the authors cover, 172, the authors cover that issue. Now, there's another case that's in there, okay, and that is the Bollinger case. And I'll look up here for a second and see if it's there. You might want to take I would like you to take a look also at the Bollinger case. It's this one. And the reason being is that it looks at demand scheduling, okay, and trying to deal with inventory. It's an inventory control problem. And I think it would be well worth your while to take a look at it, okay? Now, it's not something that's due, but it does walk you through, and it's pretty extensive on optimizing, okay, the optimizing inventory and minimizing the holding costs, and then handling your fixed costs, which are usually your ordering costs. So I think it'd be a good thing for you to take a look at it as well. Okay, and we may just do that. But I'm going to look at Janders. I've got Janders open here. Okay, and this is a make or buy decision. As I said, it starts over on page 162. And they walk you through at the top of 169. And it's always good when I do this, have the textbook open, have a piece of paper or a notepad with you, and make some notes, okay? And you'll really get a whole lot more out of this exercise, all right? And here they have the components, okay? Here's the cost per unit to make it or to buy it, and the manufacturing time in minutes, okay? And then they show you a calculator for the financial and the demand and technician. And they make apparently they are a manufacturer, and they have products, two types of products: business and engineering. Okay, and they make calculators or parts for calculators, and so you can see the base model, and then the financial and the technical, and the cartridge in the top, it looks like, and then available hours, regular and overtime. So we're starting to see, and then the cost per overtime. So we're starting to see up here, okay, the basic variables. Now, as they walk us through there in the case, in page 169, they give us the decision variables and all of the acronyms for them. There's just a whole bunch of them. Okay, and one additional decision variable is needed to determine the hours of overtime, and that's OT, number of hours of overtime required. Okay, and how many, and regular versus overtime. They've got 50 overtime hours, and the cost per hour of overtime. And obviously, they're trying to minimize the cost. You can see that if you look there in cell C17. Okay. And then there in the overtime used, they want to minimize it, or they have a target value, hopefully of 0. That's a constraint. And the time used, and then the manufacturing time used will be less than or equal to the time available. So you can see these two constraints. Now I'm going to go over here and open up the, I'll click on the data. And then we'll take a look at click the data, and we'll look at solver. And we're going to see the objective is C17, and there it is, and we want to minimize it. And then we have a variable, changing variable list, and that's B21 to B25. Pardon me, B21 to C25. So it's B21 to C25. These are the decision variables. And then B27. And then they give us the constraints. Okay. And so we want D21 to equal, D21 to D25 to equal F21 to F25. So that this is the make, how much they're going to make, and here's the number required. And we want them to be equal. And they're subject to that constraint. Okay. And then we have D30, okay, to D31. That's the time used, should be less than or equal to the time available. So we want to hit our production requirements. That's F21 to F25. Okay. And we want, in terms of D21, okay, to C, pardon me, B21, I'm sorry, right here, to C25. we want to make sure that they equal that number so that we produce the total number required. And obviously, as you can see, the number available will be equal. Okay, so that's a little different than what we've done before, the referencing. But these are the make or buy, the components, and this is the make and how much. So if we make them, we won't buy any. Let's look at this for just a second. The base model, okay, we're going to make some and then we won't buy any. And then with the financial, the FC, and that's the financial cartridge, okay, we're going to make 667 of them, okay, and then buy 2,300. I'm rolling. So that way we end up with 3,000. On the technical, technical cartridge, okay, or the technician cartridge, we're going to make 2,000 of them, but not buy any. And then on the financial top, okay, we're going to make 3,000 of them, and not buy. We're going to buy 3,000, and not make any. Same thing with the technical top. So these are components of these calculators. Faceplate or a top, then the cartridge itself. Okay. So as you can see, it's pretty complex. And again, I would reiterate that the numbers here, they've got to come from somewhere. And the authors do a fairly good job of telling us, here's where we came up with the demand or what we thought would be required, and here are the data. And in a make or buy situation, it becomes pretty complex because you have to do some extensive work internally to find out what will it cost us to make this. And then on the other hand, you have to go out in the market and see, well, what would somebody want to be paid to do this? And so if you get the numbers right, okay, then this will be an effective tool. What I recommend would be that if you're out at work, that you do this, okay, if you're given figures, but you maybe, you take some top level. See, if I wanted to give you guys an assignment, here's what I'd do, okay? I'm going to close it off for just a minute. I'd come up here and say, okay, here's one scenario. Let's call this the baseline scenario. Then I might give you another scenario where I've changed some of these variables, like demand, like cost. What I probably would do is say, okay, what would be a worst case scenario, a base case scenario, and a best case? Got it? A continuum. And you could roll those through, and I'd say, okay, what's controllable? Well, the cost issues are controllable. Okay, but what's not controllable in here is this, the demand. And that's where I would probably try to use some, I'd probably use a random technique. And I'm going to do equal rand between. And I'm going to put the bottom, and let's say that we're going to do this for financial calculators, okay? And the bottom would be, let's say, a variance of 50%. So we're going to take 1,500, okay? And that's a pretty wide variance. And we're looking at the financial, and the top would be 3,000. Okay, and the answer would be volatile, and then we could just run these trials. Now I'm going to run a whole bunch of them. I'm at cell J8, and I'm going to come all the way down here to cell J109. Remember, I was starting up there at J8, so I'm going to come up here, and I will do J7, and I will do 100 trials. Now, I can take that data, okay, copy it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go copy it. And then I'm going to come over here somewhere, and I'm going to do a paste special, and I'm going to paste the values. Okay? Then I can compute a standard deviation. I could compute the average, and I'd have the average off of 100 trials. So I could try it at random if I chose to. Okay? If I wanted to, I could come in here and I could compute, I could get the minimum number, the minimum, and the maximum to say this looks like a best case, worst case scenario, because I have quite a variance there. So you can see how I could randomize this. So I basically, and then input that into demand, okay, and I could simulate those best and worst cases. So that's where our ability to do these randomization tools is really good. And I'm going to go back because we don't need them, okay. But I started to give you the type of sign I think might be a little bit more than you'd want to do or handle, but you do know, and you can do the same thing with the technician. You can simulate the whole thing by using randomized numbers. Now, the trick is this: always use randomization on the numbers that are uncontrollable. In other words, demand, which you don't really have any control over, is the uncontrollable. So in that sense, you can fix that one. Is where I would do for the financial calculator and the technician calculator. I would do a base case, which is this, and I'd do a worst case. You might even do you could do this with the randomization. You know, hey, I'd run it out 1,000 on each one, and so you would have simulated the demand 1,000 times. Okay, that's not bad at all. 100 is pretty good. Okay, 100 randomly numbered, and that really does. That simulates really the market. You don't know if you're going to sell these. You're just doing if you make too many, what are you going to do with them? Well, okay, and you see that it's important because you got to know, how many are required, because that drives everything. So on this case, the takeaway is certainly a very well designed model of showing you how to do a make or buy. You take it by component, you compare cost per unit, okay, and then manufacturing time, and you get your demand figure, and then your overtime, and you plug it in. Okay, now I'm going to click on the data again up here, and I'll click solver, and let's look at this for a minute. Now this stuff is obvious. The objective function, we want to minimize it by changing the variables. Okay, and here they want us to do. We're gonna set C17, and we're going to change K8. Okay. Let's go back over this for just a second. And we want to change K8. Let's find K8 over here. I think because I did that randomization, it messed the things up. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this file for a minute and then reopen it. And I don't want to save anything here. Let's reopen Janders just again. You'll get some of this glitchy stuff when you play around with it, or maybe I'm just not seeing something like a dummy. I'll enable the editing, and then I click data because it didn't look right. There we go. Yeah, because I did the randomization. I made everything volatile. So we've got we minimize C17, and we're going to the changing cells B21 to C25. Okay, and that's these make or buy, the components. How much are we going to buy? How much are we going to make? Okay, and those are the changing variables, and then subject to the constraints D21 through D25, F21 through F25, and then D30 and D31, and F30 and F31. Now notice this calls for a simplex LP, and that's another issue. Always with these, there are two. Let me say this: on any one of these cases that we've run this week, they are of the nature that I would probably do a simulation. I would probably simulate some numbers, especially demand, i.e. stuff I'm going to sell. I'd randomize those because that's going to be uncontrollable. If there's anything else in the whole mix that's, I think, uncontrollable, I would randomize that as well. So I start to wash out any noise, and I get as clear a signal from the data as I can get. Okay, that's why I showed you that just a minute ago. And you can run as many trials you want, 100, 1,000, whatever. But the other thing is this: make sure you know where the numbers come from. All right, what are the assumptions? And if you did this in the real world and you presented this as a report, I or any other rational person would want to say, where did you get all these figures? And you would need to have a write-up. You'd need to have a paper that would explain each of those variables, okay, where you got the cost estimates, okay? Otherwise, you could come in looking like an idiot. And that's probably going to take some consultation with a lot of different people. That's why this tool, as I tell you, is more like think of it more like a pro forma than just a tool an individual decision maker sits down and works with. And then again, do the scenario building by using randomization on those factors you can't control. And you might even, before you build a little matrix and say, okay, well, here's cost that we think will be uncontrollable or subject to high random variation. Here's demand. You can work through that whole list of matrix and get those things. So that's the Jander's make or buy decision. And as I had mentioned to you, I would really, your business students, this is what you want to do for a living. You want to be a superior business person. You want to be better because it is competitive. So, I'd say take this stuff to heart. Now, I'm going to close this and close this other one. And one of the cases that I don't give you is Bollinger. But I would really encourage you to open up the Bollinger case and take a look at it as well. It's not due. I'm not asking you to turn it in for me. But I do believe, if you could see, this starts to really walk you through. This shows you a whole production model, okay, using optimization. And I'm going to click on the data, click on solver, and here you go. And the case in there is quite extensive. And again, the same kinds of principles that I've mentioned apply here. This is a very complete case. And again, they're assuming simplex. And what they're assuming is that there is a linear relationship between cost and time, cost and labor. There's a linear relationship between a cost, which infers price, and demand. Okay, so that's another. So you'll want to see that, because we're going to move into some models where we're not using simplex. We're going to use some nonlinear models, and then we're also going to do some that are called evolutionary. We're just exploring. Okay, so I do hope you would try the Bollinger. In fact, let me say this: this chapter 4, is a tour de force, if you will. I probably butchered the French, of seeing how versatile a tool this is. Now, I've got a few other things I want to show you, okay? And let's pop back over here to the modules. All right, and we'll scroll down here to today. So we've looked at relax, we've looked at wealthy, we've looked at genders. I didn't ask you to manipulate any variables. If you wanted to play with some of them and then upload them and put if you decide to take one of these, review or wealthy or genders, or even one of the other like Bollinger, and manipulate the variables a little bit, or run a simulation and then upload it. If you do, put a comment in and say, hey, Dr. Harmon, I messed with it a little bit here. Here's what it looks like if I change this variable or that one versus what the book solution was. Because what I'm letting you see are solution files, but the main thing is to see how versatile a tool this is, and why management science is about problem solving and decision making. And you I sound like a broker in here. Yes. Where did you get those data? Okay. Have you considered the data that are controllable versus those that are not controllable? Okay. And those that are not controllable, have you provided decision makers, whether it's yourself or a team or somebody else, a set of possible outcomes based upon maybe randomization or history, you say, oh, you have a year where you're really bad, a really good year. And again, use the tools. That's what they're there for. Speaking of that, I want to show you, here's a tool on meeting the inventor of the electric spreadsheet. Okay, now let me say something. This is from TED. Okay, and under a Creative Commons use. Okay, this is not for any rebroadcast or anything like this. So this is just solely for this class. What I prefer you to do would be to take the link up here, click it, open up a new tab, and go take a look. But this is a interesting 12 minutes from the guy who invented this spreadsheet. It's very fascinating stuff. And let's scroll on down here, and we'll come back down to the module. Also, I have for you a resource that talks about the history of operations research. And operations research and management science are used interchangeably. In some ways, and this is from Informs, which is the umbrella group of anybody who's involved with management science or operations. This is an article that covers the history of operations research. And if you're talking about the history of operations research, you're also talking about the history of management science. Okay? And this refers to a book, Rational Action. Look, back the field of management itself is not that long, and management science and operations research are not that old. In fact, they really took off, okay, during the Second World War, when we faced some enormous logistical demands. moving equipment, moving people, trying to make estimates of how far, the logistics just involved of moving tens of thousands of people and all their equipment across landscape, getting supplies, building aircraft. And so the field came into its own, and that history there discusses that, and that it's really born in modern warfare, in the Second World War. The same can be said of logistics, although people were talking about and using logistics techniques in the First World War, and that was when we had trains and we moved people. The precursor of all of this really was the Civil War in the United States. The Civil War in the United States was the first modern war where people were transported by rail, okay, where the Gatling gun was used. It was a machine gun, the first machine gun, a Gatling gun, multiple fire, better calibrated weapons, etc. But the main thing was just the issue of using logistics against your enemy or for them. And what the North simply did was they attacked choke points, rivers, rail lines. They put a blockade around the shoreline of the southern states, and they just simply starved them to death. Okay, and then they also knew they had greater manufacturing capacity, so they just made more weapons than the South could ever handle. And although the South had brilliant generals, they were outgunned from the start, and they had brilliant generals who understood set piece battles, but they didn't have people like, say, Sherman or Grant, who understood that if I just simply surround Vicksburg, I'm going to starve them out. I don't need to lose 25,000 people trying to invade the city. I'll just cut it off from the rest of the world and bombard the city till they decide they've had enough. And so there's a lot of this is comes from warfare. A lot of this then also comes from the demands for just modern manufacturing. And so there's been that history, and I would want you to see and learn about it. Now, one of the interesting little things I think you'll find is Leisure Airlines. Okay, and this is a little XLS file I have on Leisure Airlines. I'm going to download it. Okay, and this shows you where they're located and has their zip code. And if you wanted to, you could go out and take those zip codes, okay? And in fact, you have their full address and zip code, and you could map where they fly. And I think let's do this for just a second. I'm going to go ahead, and I've got this data, and I'm going to do a new tab, and let's see. I'm going to go. Who do I want to use? Easy Map Maker. Go there. Create a map from data, Excel data. Okay. I'm going to click Create a Map. Okay. And I'm going to get my data. I think we've gone over here. Copy that. Okay. Come back up here and click my data there, paste, and then make map. And it's going to make me a map. And this will help put put into perspective this airline. And here they are. Okay. Now, you say, what's the point? Well, if you're dealing with if you deal with logistical problems, which is what this is, by the way, you're going leisure. You'll want to look at this. As you can see, obviously, they're limited to the East Coast. They've got a northern they've got a northern tier that they run, and they've got a southern tier. Okay, and it's obvious that they run pretty limited outfit. Now, we did create a map. All right, and so you have that XLS file, and that was a pretty easy thing to do, I think. And let's go back over here. So I want to let you see where they operate, okay? Now, there are two other resources here that I think are worth your time and energy. And this is a PowerPoint, okay? I'm going to download this PowerPoint, okay? So we could see it a little bit easier. And this deals with this is transportation geography. This is a and I think he's at the university. I believe he's at Hofstra. But this is a PowerPoint that he uploaded that he will let people see that works with transportation network issues. And again, he walks you through an introduction to them, and this would be worth your time to learn about network structures, centrifugal and centripetal networks, structure, how they are put together, their coverage, some basic principles. And we use network topology. We're going to be working with some network topology. Gives you some great definitions. This is well worth your time. Now, I'm not going to kill you and of course, these are old data, all right? But this will help you see some key ideas, okay, in terms of transportation logistics. So I'm going to close that off. And I've got that there for you. Again, it's a resource. You're a business student. You want to be the best in the world. You're going to have to be the best in the world if you want us to be successful. And you'll do the extra time and energy to go over and take a look at this. I'll never give you a quiz over it or anything like that, although I could. Okay. But I do think it's important for you to take a look at that and to see that concept of transport geography, because our problem in this one's dealing with it. And here's a final resource I'd like you to take a look at as well. This covers how the low-cost airlines alter the economics of flying. And it's an excellent, excellent piece. It's from the New York Times Business. And it talks about low-cost airlines, like leisure is, how they have impacted the airline industry. Now, as we get into the case next week, I think I'll have some resources for you that will cover. I'll show you the key, but I think you'll also get to see and these are destinations to be pasted in an easy map maker. It's another one, and this is their airliner that they use. And here's some more information about how airlines decide what fare you pay. We've talked a little bit about that in class, so you'll get a dose of this. But leisure's a nice little case, very interesting in terms of the issues. So we'll go to the modules, okay? And so again, you've got Relax, Welty, and Janders. Those are all due on the 22nd. Leisure is due on the 22nd, okay? And let's look at Pier for just a minute and see what I tell you to do. And here, I ask you to compute the maximum revenue with leg one has a -10 fare and then a +10 demand, okay? A -10 fare and a plus demand for leg one. once you do yeah, a minus 10 fair and 10, add 10% demand. Okay, and then leg 2, I have you do minus 7% fair and 11% demand, and then on leg 3, I have you do a 6% increase in the fair, but no change in the demand. So I have you manipulate the variables a little bit, and we'll walk through that key for Friday. Well, folks, that's it. This is for your Wednesday. You've got these cases to do. And of course, you can go back and just upload the case that's there. If you want to manipulate the variables a little bit before you turn it in, do that. Save it, turn it in, and give me a comment that you've done so. And you could do that, you know, and I'll be interested to see if any of you take a look at the Bollinger case. I think that's one to take a look at as well. I thank you very much, and that'll do it for our virtual Wednesday. As I mentioned, I was going to pre-record. I'm not able to live stream because my Wednesday is full up of insurance stuff. We all have to deal with that kind of thing. So you do have this and the assignments, what are due, and we'll take care. So take care very much, and I'm going to stop the share, okay? And then I'm going to stop the recording,